Well, wasn't this an interesting day? Old Hunter Biden, it would appear, has lost his plea deal. Now, does this mean that Hunter is going to prison? Does this mean that Joe Biden has been unable to protect him? Or that perhaps Joe's protection was not enough because Hunter's crimes were just so severe that not even the president could protect him from our very fair and noble judicial system? Somehow, I think that's not the case. So, for those unaware, what appears to have happened, we all talked about Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea deal. We knew that that was going on. He was going to get his gun charge, and gosh, what were the other two things? I don't even remember at this point, because I mean, there's so many other things that he's guilty of that they're just not, they're not charging him with, at least not yet. I really didn't pay much attention to the plea deal. I wasn't. Oh, it was taxes. That's right. It was like tax fraud or something. Oops, I didn't pay like $12 million in taxes. Sorry, guys. No prison time for that, even though everybody else would get life in prison, if they shorted the government even 1% the taxes that Hunter Biden did. But anyway, all that was good. But then apparently the plea deal was so far-reaching, even beyond those charges, that the judge said, I just can't sign off on this. It's just too broad. It was pretty much like a full pardon. That appears to be what the Justice Department was trying to give him. They were trying to give Hunter Biden a full pardon without the president actually, officially giving him a full pardon, which was kind of funny. It was, okay, you pleaded this, and, these charges will go away because, you're going to plead down, and then pretty much any other charges in the future are not going to be brought. We're just not going to prosecute Hunter Biden for anything, even if it's unrelated to this, to this particular trial. And the judge said, you can't just, in a plea bargain, give someone, it's essentially a full pardon. And so, since that is not the case now, I don't know if she just threw out the plea deal entirely, or she said, hey, this part of the plea deal, can't happen. You can only plead down, for these charges. You can't bring in outside stuff. Whatever the details were, in the end, Hunter did not take the plea. He was not able to plead. So he has entered a not guilty plea, which will be interesting, because if he's pleading not guilty, we should go to trial, right? There should be a trial of Hunter Biden. Well, even if there was, it would be on lying on a Form 4473 and lying on his taxes. Not the most interesting trial in the world, and I'm sure the judge, since federal judges hate transparency, would not allow any cameras inside, so we wouldn't even get to watch it. It'd just be a big waste of taxpayer money, millions of dollars, to try Hunter Biden when we all know he's going to be, at the end of the day, when Joe Biden is leaving the White House, Hunter's going to get pardoned. He's going to get a full pardon. He needs a full pardon because he's just guilty of too many crimes. And so now the talk is that these other crimes that he was hoping to get essentially immunity from as a result of this plea deal were to deal with the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which ever since Trump became president, everybody is getting prosecuted under FAR, and it'd be interesting to see a Democrat get prosecuted for FAR for once, because they went. That's how they put Paul Manafort in prison. That's how they tried to put Michael Flynn in prison. And nobody ever, got thrown in prison because of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Everyone in Washington, or I shouldn't say everyone, maybe half the people are lobbyists for foreign governments, and probably 5% of them admit to it. And so this is something that you really, in Washington, you could use to take down anybody, almost anybody. It's a law that, if enforced, would just end up with everyone behind bars. And so, again, I don't buy that the DOJ is ever going to try and put Hunter in prison. After all, that's why they wanted to give him this plea deal, because they really don't want to move forward and have to prosecute him for anything. It's a very uncomfortable situation for them. Nobody wants to be the guy to go after the boss's son. Hell, you don't want to go after the boss's dad either. Look what happened to Chris Christie. He prosecuted Jared Kushner's father, and all those years later came back to bite him. And Trump was happy to have Christie's support during the campaign and the transition. As soon as that was over, he said, "Sorry, Chris, I'm kicking you to the curb because you put my son-in-law's father in prison." And ever since then, Christie's been very bitter, and that's why he's running for president. Not that he'll go anywhere. I mean, you notice I haven't even mentioned Chris Christie. But he was on the radio today, so I did hear a little bit of Chris Christie. There's nothing interesting, of course. He is still himself. But we all know, no matter, even if the Justice Department somehow went rogue, and they were going to take down Hunter, and they were really going to throw the book at him, Joe is going to intervene to stop it, even if it hurts him politically. He would do that, and he would end up just, not running for a second term, and, not much would change. Other than the fact that, there would have to be a different Democratic nominee. But we'll have to see how far this goes to gauge whether or not there is a chance of a Democratic nominee other than Joe Biden. Now, the other thing going on today that was garnering as much or more attention, depending on what media sources you were looking at, was the UFO hearings in Congress, where they have this guy Grush, who did I talk about him on the channel before? I don't remember. I've talked about him a lot in real life to people. I don't remember if I ever talked about it on this channel. But this guy Grush, who was a Pentagon whistleblower who I guess worked on the UFO task force a few years ago, he came forward essentially saying, yes, there are aliens. We had live aliens. And we have spaceships. And no, I haven't seen any of it, but and so they go, oh, well, what's the source for this? Trust me, bro. That's basically his story. There have been people who have come forward with whistleblowers, real whistleblowers, with similar, I shouldn't say real whistleblowers, because obviously I can't corroborate their stories since we haven't, all this stuff is classified. But there have been people who've come forward who've said basically the same thing that Mr. Grush said in front of Congress today, but they claimed firsthand knowledge. People like Bob Lazar, who claimed to have worked in places like Area 51, or places like, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or other instances. People who were first-hand witnesses to things that saying, hey, saw a UFO crash and the government came and took the wreckage away, this sort of thing. These people have always existed, but now the first person that the media and the politicians are taking seriously is someone who has no first-hand knowledge. He has all second-hand knowledge from when he was working on this UFO task force, and so he was shown things by people who said, hey, yeah, I saw this, and here's some documentation. But he himself never saw any of the craft. He never saw any of the bodies. He basically just, I'm not saying that he's wrong, but he's not the greatest source because he doesn't have first-hand knowledge. The people who we need are the folks inside who informed him of this. Those are the people who need to actually be whistleblowers. This guy getting a lot of attention, it is interesting. I'm glad that the UFO stuff comes up. I find it interesting. It's entertaining. It doesn't really add anything. Now, maybe that will change. Maybe we'll start to get some cold, hard facts, and I wish we did. I'm glad that Congress is looking at it, but what I'm getting at here is that it doesn't feel natural that this is the first guy who Congress is taking seriously. It doesn't feel natural that Congress all of a sudden, is open to the idea of UFOs when they've been a part of trying to, say that this doesn't exist just like the rest of the government, for so many decades. It feels to me like they're setting up a red herring. And some folks in Congress might actually believe it. They might think that these are, this is a totally organic situation. But to me, it just smells like a psyop. It's not proof. I don't have a source saying it's a psyop, but that's what it feels like. I feel like if we were going to find out that UFOs are real and the government was going to start admitting things, it just wouldn't happen this way. Now, we have no precedent for what it would be like if the government started disclosing UFOs. So I can't say with 100% certainty that this is not what it would look like. But it's just, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't pass the smell test. It might just be that this guy, is in the right place at the right time. And that's why he's being taken seriously, because we're in an era where people are more open to this idea. And, he, while not the best, UFO whistleblower in history, maybe he's credible enough at a time when people are willing to listen to get attention. Now, do I think that this is all a psyop to cover up Hunter Biden? I think that's probably a little far-fetched because it's hard to schedule all these things like this. I don't know how hard it is to move around hearings in Congress, but I just, I wouldn't say I'm a conspiracy nut, but I'm open. I'm conspiracy conscious, certainly. And this just seems like a bridge too far to me. I think that it probably is a coincidence that these things are going on the same day. And I've seen more coverage of Hunter Biden than the UFO stuff personally. So anyway, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.